I remember thinking about this story. It's got to be 30 years ago. And I think the meaning of the story stood out for me. Sometimes, when you read complicated material, sometimes a piece of it will stand out. It's, for some reason, it's like it glitters, I suppose. That might be one way of thinking about it. You're in sync with it, and you can understand what it means. I've really experienced that reading the Tao Te Ching, which is a document I would really like to do a lecture on at some point. Because some of the verses I don't understand, but others stand right out and I can understand them. And I think I understood what this part of the story of Noah meant. And I think it means, we talked a little bit about what nakedness meant in the story of Adam and Eve. And the idea essentially was that to know yourself naked is to become aware of your vulnerability, your physical boundaries in time and space, and your fundamental physiological insufficiencies as they might be judged by others. So there's biological insufficiency that's sort of built into you because you're a fragile, mortal, vulnerable, half-insane creature, and that's just an existential truth. And then, of course, even merely as a human being, even with all those faults, there are faults that you have that are particular to you that might be judged harshly by the group. Well, will definitely be judged harshly by the group. And so to become aware of your nakedness is to become self-conscious and to know your limits and to know your vulnerability. And that's what is revealed to Ham when he comes across his father naked. And so the question is, what does it mean to see your father naked? And it seems to me, and especially in an inappropriate manner like this, it's as if Ham, he does the same thing that happens in the Mesopotamian creation myth when Tiamat and Apsu give rise to the first gods. They're the father of the eventual deity of redemption, Marduk. They're very careless and noisy, and they kill Apsu, their father, and attempt to inhabit his corpse. And that makes Tiamat enraged, and so she bursts forth from the darkness to do them in. It's like a precursor to the flood story, or an analog to the flood story. And I see the same thing happening here with Ham, is that he's insufficiently respectful of his father. And the question is exactly, what does the father represent? And you could say, well, there's the father that you have, and that's a human being, that's a man like other men, a man among men, but then there's the father as such, and that's the spirit of the father. And insofar as you have a father, you have both at the same time. You have the personal father that's a man among other men, just like anyone else's father. But insofar as that man is your father, that means that he's something different than just another person. And what he is the incarnation of the spirit of the Father. And to see that, to take it to what? To disrespect that carelessly. Maybe even, like Noah makes a mistake, right? He produces wine and gets himself drunk. And you might say, well, if he's sprawled out there for everyone to see, it's hardly Ham's fault if he stumbles across him. But the book is laying out a danger. And the danger is that, well, maybe you catch your father at his most vulnerable moment, and if you're disrespectful, then you transgress against the spirit of the Father. And if you transgress against the spirit of the Father and lose respect for the spirit of the Father, then that is likely to transform you into a slave. That's a very interesting idea, and I think it's particularly interesting, maybe not particularly interesting, but it's particularly germane, I think, to our current cultural situation, because I think that we're pushed constantly to see the nakedness of our father, so to speak, because of the intense criticism that's directed towards our culture and the patriarchal culture, so to speak. We're constantly exposing its weaknesses and vulnerabilities and, let's say, nakedness. And there's nothing wrong with criticism, but the thing about criticism is the purpose of criticism is to separate the wheat from the chaff. It's not to burn everything to the ground, right? It's to say, well, we're going to carefully look at this. We're going to carefully differentiate. We're going to keep what's good and we're going to move away from what's bad. But the point of the criticism isn't to identify everything as bad. It's to separate what's good from what's bad so that you can retain what's good and move towards it.